Mr. Glade?
Good evening. My name is Tom Glade. I am here this evening representing Evergreen Islands, and I reside at 210 Mansfield Court. I would first like to make a point of order about the...
Mr. Mayor, point of order.
Mr. Gear? I'm sorry, Mr. Glade. You're here.
Pardon me, Mr. Furlow said that the first point of business was going to be address the motion.
Mr. Glade, you're here to testify on the record.
I know, but
Let's hear your
there
testimony.
has been, Mr. Furlow has
Tom,
said that...
you're out of order.
I am not out of order, sir.
Give your testimony.
Living facility. So, since it's not clearly an assisted living facility, the administrator's opinion is clearly in error and should be reversed. Thank you for your time this evening.
Thank you.
Mr. Mayor,
Mr. Gear?
I have a question of Mr. Glade about Exhibit 38 in the packet.
You want to wait until we hear from everyone, and then you can ask your questions?
Oh, well, maybe I misunderstood Mr. Furlong. It's up to you, sir.
It's up to you. It's your...
Well, while he's up here, you can
Okay.
just clarify that for me.
Go ahead.
Thank you.
Mr. Glade, this is Exhibit 38 from all the evidence we've had. And in it, it's an appeal. And in it, you wrote your appeal to talk about, in the end, basically remanding the issue back to the Planning Commission, recommendation for consideration on design proposal. And attached to Exhibit 38 in our evidence packet is a letter from Mr. Ross Barnes talking about remanding back to the Planning Commission regarding certain conditions. I want to clarify, I guess, for clarification from you. We did that. I did that. Okay, and going over, as Mr. Christensen said, the hours of testimony and reading that I've been doing in that meeting, the city process was chastised for remanding it back to the Planning Commission by you. And I need to know, because this is evidence, do I disregard this now? What you appealed?
You left out a part of that, Mr. Gear.
Okay, and hey, I'm just point of clarification. That's all
I'll
it
give you
is.
an analogy to the Anaco burn.
Well, we
Okay.
have to stick to this.
All right, no, but you remanded
Right.
the Anaco burn back to the Planning Commission.
I'm not talking about.
I am talking about why it's different.
Hang on. Let's make sure we're not out of line here. Bear with me. Are we out of order talking about? Okay. Well, I'm not talking about.
Well, okay, what I'm talking about is that when the city council had remanded it to the Planning Commission, they have issued a new decision, a new recommendation, as they did in the Anaco burn.
Okay.
What our difference is that in this case, there was no new recommendation. That is the
Mr.
difference,
Glade,
sir.
sir, I was the one that made the motion.
I
know what
understand
the
that.
hang on. I know what the motion was, and I know why it was remanded back. Okay, this came from you, and
I know.
I want to clarify. Hang on a second.
I understand
Hang
your
on a
motion,
second.
and you're asking
Sir,
me my reason.
And let me explain
that-
why I'm questioning this. Okay, we have an obligation in this quasi-judicial issue to go over all the evidence, and I found something contradictory. I simply don't understand why, when we got this and we looked at this and we read through it, and I made the motion and wanted some clarification, nothing new was to be decided at that Planning Commission meeting. And we were referring back to evidence that was already in the testimony. Why? Because you made some very serious allegations, and
Mr.
as
Chair,
evidence.
may I answer your question, please?
I hope so.
At the time I wrote that appeal, the subject of whether the Planning Commission was going to be able to make a recommendation was not on the table. I had all expectations, expected that the Planning Commission would make a new recommendation. That is my answer to your question.
Okay, sir.
Okay.
We remanded back issues that came from the Planning Commission upon the request of Evergreen Islands. So it would be my belief that there would be an understanding that there'd be no new recommendations coming out of that meeting.
That
Be
was not
remanded
my,
back.
sir, that was not my,
It's in
because
your
in
evidence
previous
packet.
experience, that did not happen.
It's in your evidence packet. I encourage you to read it.
Look, I don't think we're going to sort this issue out right at this moment in time. Kathy Lindberg.
Good evening. It's good to see all of you again. My name is Kathy Lindberg. I live at 1515 34th Street in Anacortes. I wasn't planning on saying this, but I first want to address once again something that the applicant keeps bringing up, and that is that he has originally got supporters' signatures for his plan. I dare say that if he went around the neighborhood today, that he would get 0.
Okay, we're here to talk about the,
But he brought it up. I just wanted to, I understand.
yeah,
I understand.
and we've heard him say that we may not get that level of support now. So go ahead and just
Well, I was one of those signatures, and I'm
Give your
standing before you
testimony.
as an appellant right now.
give your
6 months later.
testimony, please,
Okay.
based on the record.
Yes, I
Thank you.
As historical houses, and they are to preserve. There's nothing on the books at this point that mandates it, but people are doing this on a volunteer basis. If you drive throughout Anacortes in the other wards, you will see that a lot of people have taken renewed pride in their homes with remodels, with new buildings.
Nick, I'm sorry.
Well, let me get into
Okay,
a point.
okay, thank you.
Because it's important that we maintain our neighborhoods. This facility does not maintain the neighborhood. It's an adverse impact.
Nick,
Wait a minute, I just read that we could comment on the whole package.
I think we're trying to address each appeal.
Pardon?
I think we're trying to address each appeal sequentially.
Okay, I'll reserve my comments. I'll reserve the rest of my comments for a future opportunity to talk then,
Okay, thank you, Nick.
tonight.
Okay.
Interpretation. So I'd like to hear how other people feel about that.
Mr. Mayor,
Ms. Pickett?
I'll go next.
I can see both sides of this. I mean, on the one hand, we don't have any limitation on how many members of a family can occupy a dwelling unit. So, I mean, I think what the rule is really trying to get at is the impacts on the neighborhood. That's really what it's all about. I mean, we can get lost in all of these little paragraphs and all the legal things, but really what the law is trying to get at is to protect the neighborhood from untoward impacts. Now, we don't have any, in my opinion, any real story on the record besides a bunch of hair tearing and pitchfork waving that really says these citizens are going to create a terrible impact on the neighborhood. And the traffic study doesn't provide it either. Now, I know people feel that this can be discredited and thrown away,